Okay, so welcome everyone. We're probably going to wait a minute or two before we officially kick off, since it is just now 12 o'clock and there are a lot of people who RSVP'd for this discussion. So we'll just be giving this a minute or two. Just a quick note, reminder, please mute yourself. We will play Mute Ninja, but it helps us out. If you stay on top of that, please feel free to keep your camera on. Please also feel free to drop your LinkedIn in the chat if you would like to do that. Networking is extremely important, a topic that will come up in today's discussion. So we'll probably just wait another minute or so for those of you who are still joining. Welcome. Please be sure to mute yourself. Please leave your camera on. Oh, we are recording this session. Just want to make sure everyone who's here has heard that. We will be dropping links in the chat. And also, please put questions for panelists as you are listening to the discussion. Please put them in the chat. We'll do our best to address them. We're reserving time at the end. I see Philadelphia is in the house. That's awesome. It is a great town. Okay, so we are getting close to that time to kick it off. I'm sure more attendees will join throughout this discussion. That's okay. But I think we have critical mass to begin. So officially welcome everyone to this really exciting and important conversation about the gender crisis in crypto, specifically, where are the women? Before we dive into this event, I just want to say a quick note about the fourth floor. There may be those of you here joining us today who are not members of the fourth floor and who don't really know, aren't familiar with the fourth floor. So just a quick shout out that we are an innovative community as a service platform addressing the gender, wealth, and funding gap by getting women onto the boards and cap tables of women-led startups, and also allowing an on-ramp for all companies to participate and to diversify their boards and executive teams and be part of driving systemic change. So that is what the fourth floor is all about. If you are interested in advancing your board or investment career, or finding funding and opportunities for your startup, especially by building out and leveraging advisory or governing boards, please apply to join the fourth floor in the chat. It is only $1 for women founders, entrepreneurs who list at least one opportunity in our board seat exchange. We have hundreds of board opportunity listings right now today in our board seat exchange, and we are growing the board seat exchange constantly with internal startups and also external companies. So please come join us if you're interested. Link is in the chat. Okay, so without further ado, let's get to the reason why all of you are here. Let's talk about the gender crisis in crypto. We are so excited to be joined by truly our incredible panelists today. Nisa Amoils. Nisa, I feel like I never say your last name right, so we will let you also, when you introduce yourself, correct me. Please join me here in the chat. Nisa is an author, a venture capitalist, recovering securities lawyer, among other things. And also we are joined by Jessica Greenwalt, who is a crypto product designer, NFT strategist, UX researcher, and digital artist, and also was just named creative director for Vayner Midius NFT division. I'm not sure if I said that right either. And Emily Poehler, who is founder of Poehler Legal and is a legal expert on crypto-related entities. Actually, Kat, are you able to, maybe you are not able to pin to the spotlight the other panelists.
No, I can do it, Brain.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Please, let's just take a minute and I'll let the panelists join me here. And I know that everyone would love to hear more about each panelist, so about their backgrounds and the perspective that each one of you brings to this discussion topic today, which is the gender crisis in crypto. So, so we will go through the panelists in turn and hear from each of you about, your own background and your story and your unique perspective. So Nisa, let's start with you. And I apologize because I do not think I said your last name right. So
sure, no, you did. It's Nisa Amoils. Hi, everybody. So as you mentioned, started out as a securities and corporate lawyer, then have been in venture capital about the past 10 years, came from a traditional venture fund, have been exclusively investing in blockchain and crypto for the last 5 years, and have also written a book in 2019 entitled WTF is Happening, Women Tech Founders on the Rise, about the fact that women still only receive 2% of all venture funding, and the importance of including women in emerging technologies, not only as the moral imperative, but also the business case for it, better returns, and do some media on the side as well. So that's my background.
amazing. Thank you. Welcome. We're so happy to have you join us here. Jessica.
Hi, yeah, to follow up on what you said, I just joined VaynerMedia as a creative director there on Monday. So I'm catching up on everything there. If you're wondering why I'm smiling, it's because my parakeet is running around my desk right now. And I'm like playing this game of making sure he doesn't eat my wires. If you hear bird chirping in the background, that's what's going on here. But yeah, I'm the creative VP for a crypto security company or cybersecurity company that happens to be the top in the crypto industry called Fishport. And we work on open source tools to help keep people safe online. I'm also the crypto expert for Dreamers and Doers, a international female founder network. And I volunteer a lot of time onboarding women into the space, educating women in how to get involved in crypto, how to use it, how to work on DeFi, and how to get into NFTs. That's what I've been doing. I've been on this mission to get more women in the space and just diversify the user base of crypto and NFTs and make sure that everyone is benefiting from this technology.
Yes, amazing. Well, welcome. And we're really happy to have you here, Jessica, as well. Emily.
Hi, my name is Emily Poehler. As Breen said, I'm the founder of Poehler Legal. I founded my firm a little over 4 years ago. And one of the reasons behind founding it was to provide room for mostly women who have sort of traditionally been forced to choose between having a family or having outside responsibilities and being able to work or practice law. So that's sort of how I came to this space. And in my practice, I represent a number of entities that are either involved in the crypto industry or adjacent and may offer, for example, SaaS tools that exchanges use for anti-money laundering, for example, or other types of compliance issues.
Right, very interesting. Yeah, no, I think crypto adjacent, that's a good point, and definitely want to hear a lot more about that later. Okay, so let's dive right into the first topic, which is really the headline question. Where are all the women? So why are there so few women in this space? Is it that the barriers to entry into crypto and crypto adjacent fields are really high? Is it a bro culture thing? Is it because women can't get funded? As Nisa, as you mentioned in your introduction, women consistently for a long time now have received less than 2% of venture dollars. So actually, Nisa, let's start with you, because I know that you are, among lots of other things, you are active advocating for legislative change in DC. And I think it would also be interesting to hear if there are legislative barriers that we could throw onto this laundry list of reasons why women are not in this space.
Well, I think that the existing establishment, has, in other words, women like me who are able to invest in other women, has proportionally been like only 5 or 7%. And it's very hard to start and raise a fund. And so what you see happening is pattern matching. and the capital just goes to people that the white men feel comfortable with. And that's also been the case for women on boards for a long time, but the legislative change that happened recently, where NASDAQ and the SEC said that you're not going to be able to list unless you have 2 women on your boards, has really made a change happen. And what I was saying when we all talked was, if you could make the same kind of change here, then you would see the numbers go up. But that hasn't happened yet. And I'm not sure really, who's advocating for that at this point.
Really interesting. And what would that type of change look like? Like, what form would that legislative change be in when you're talking about the crypto space or getting more women into crypto?
Well, I mean, it would really be quotas for funding, right? Or, quotas for the amount of female partners on the team, or, that's how you would really have to do it. But now, with DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, there's a lower barrier to getting involved in a DAO than there is in a venture fund. So that more women are starting to gravitate towards that structure. And maybe, when that becomes big enough, that will make an indent as well. But you can't really mandate that, women invest in crypto. It's interesting to see, though, that they don't, that they're missing out on a huge wealth creation opportunity, that, they're not taking enough quote unquote risk, and that they think, that they're going to end up okay just on their salaries. And we know that that's not true. So I think that, right, I've personally, I started a fund in the space, and I lowered the barrier of entry for women so that they could come into the fund and learn and grow. And there's been only a handful of women who've taken me up on that offer. So I'm consistently wondering why that is.
Right. No, that's a great point. And just to connect the dots for everyone listening, when we're talking about where are all the women and how do we get more women in the crypto space, one aspect of that is investing in crypto. And Nisa, you're really connecting the dots between having more women with check writing power, that effect, the trickle down effect from that, more women getting funded who are founders in the crypto space. So it's sort of like 2 birds, 1 stone. If you had legislative change that got more women able to write checks in the crypto space, then you will have more founders in the crypto space getting funded. And then that, the exponentially, you have more women involved. So I think that that's a great point. And then also it just really flows into my question for you, Jessica, because you're asking me, so why not? Right? Why are we not investing? Why are we sleeping on the opportunity? And Jessica, you made the point when we were discussing earlier that repeat, like again and again, you see men willing to pay to get involved in the space, and yet women won't get involved even when it's offered for free. So maybe you can tell us what that's about.
Yeah, here's what's been kind of driving me crazy a little bit. So I've been offering these free education sessions to female founders, women entrepreneurs for the past year, right? And there's a sizable group of women who show up for these meetings, but very few of them actually dive in and take the first steps, get some crypto and start investing in and staking it and all that fun stuff, right? And as we go along, I'm like, I'll post updates. I'm like, if you picked up some ETH at this point, you're looking at, this return right now. If you picked up some BNB, you're looking at this right now. And they get to watch alongside the people who are actually playing in the space what they're missing out on. And it's still taking about 6 months before anyone pulls the trigger. And at that point, we're talking about you've missed out on a whole heck of a lot of growth right there, right? And then even now, after 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, I still have people in the group who just haven't pulled the trigger for whatever reason, right? But they're still listening, they're learning about it, they're curious enough about it to make it to my group, right? At this point of the year, it would be actually hard to find someone who isn't interested in at least learning about crypto. But as far as pulling the trigger and actually just making that jump and diving in, for whatever reason, there's this like hesitancy where I'd say about, I want to say 10% of the people who are in this massive group of women who want to be educated on crypto have actually pulled the trigger, bought some crypto, and are learning how to play with it, right? Whereas, you know, I do this voluntarily. I offer this for free for female entrepreneurs. They can hop in the group. I will teach them everything they need to know. Their husbands find out about it, or boyfriends find out about it, guys find out about it, and CEOs and everything else. And they hit me up constantly like, hey, can I pay you to walk me through this process? Can I pay you for a one-on-one session? And I've been doing that like at the beginning of the year. And it kind of, it blows my mind how many more guys are willing to pay significant amounts of money to sit down for an hour session, learn how to get onboarded. Then there are women who are taking me up on the opportunity to learn how to do this for free. And if they had done this at the beginning of the year, they would be very, very happy right now. I even had like a good friend I wanted to rope into this NFT project, and she was not really happy about her job. And I was telling her like, hey, just join me on this generative NFT project. Like if you're our front end dev, it'd be awesome because I'd love to have another woman on the team. And also you could quit your job, right? Like you don't like that job. The upside you're looking at on this project is significant. It's probably a year's salary with 3 months of work, part-time. So I think you should do it. And she got cold feet. Like initially she's like, oh yeah, I'll do it. And then I don't know what it is. There's something about the space or crypto or NFTs or the projects in general that make women feel nervous or uncomfortable when I talk to them about it. And I've asked the group, like, why? I'm literally just like handing you this, being like, you really should do this, you know, like hashtag not financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor. But I do see an opportunity to maybe play around with this and learn either way, regardless of whether or not you're in it for wealth building opportunities. It's important technology to understand because it's going to change your life, whether you like it or not. It's changing every industry we deal with. So learn about it now or have to play a lot of catch up later, right? So, you know, I've asked people like, why haven't you jumped in? Why haven't you just done it? Like just play with couple $100, right? Like just to get started, get your feet wet and get comfortable with the idea. And I get a variety of answers, right? Like it's really intimidating, right? And I think part of that is because you look at the space and see, okay, there isn't really anyone else like me in it. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable going to most people asking for help. It seems like a boys club. It doesn't seem like something I'm invited to kind of situation. And then, well, I haven't heard this articulated. The theory that I have is that because women are expected to take on a lot of additional responsibility of household management and caring for family and everything else that comes along with this kind of expectation of what you're supposed to do as a woman in a family, it doesn't leave you a lot of free time to learn these extracurricular things, right? Like to sit down and just really dive into more complex topics or things that are outside of what you need to do right now, right? Like imagine you're holding down a job, you're raising kids, you're managing your household. At what point do you have the free time to be like, okay, now I'm going to learn about this crazy thing called crypto and NFTs and become an expert in that, right? Like I think it might be a time crunch situation in addition to looking at the space and feeling like it's just not for you. My parakeet just fell on the floor. Yeah. And so that's my theory right now. I don't know, and I would love to see, you know, I see people are dropping in the comments their thoughts on this, but I'd love to see what else people think.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Emily, I see that you're about to speak, which is great because and it's such a good segue because there were so many things. I mean, one, you were making a point about how for lawyers, it's very difficult to have, you know, to be both things simultaneously, you know, to found your own firm, be a legal leader, also, you know, have all the other expectations and responsibility that often comes juggling a family. So right there, like that, I'm sure is a topic you certainly can speak to. And another point that you had made was that a lot of times, you're the only woman in the room. And so this happened, certainly in technology and finance, once you're in the upper levels, right? Like, I feel like it frequently happens, especially then if you're talking about crypto related entities and crypto adjacent, which is where you're practicing. So how much of this is coming from being the only woman at the table? And then lastly, and I know there's a lot I'm throwing on you, but lastly,
I'm going to try and remember all this.
I know, gotta be writing this down. I'll remind you. But risk, right? You're the arbiter of risk. Like, that's what being a lawyer is all about. And, women tend to be more risk adverse. How much of this is this psychology around risk and risk taking? So anyway, there you go.
So, yeah, I mean, I do think that there is some aspect to, family and other obligations. I do think, and I think I saw somebody commented on this in the chat, like, traditionally, I mean, my background, even before I became a lawyer, was in science. And so I have been in sort of technology and science, and sort of started out being in a more male dominated field. What I do as a lawyer is in a more male dominated, part of the profession. So then I do think that when you're starting to talk about technology and you're starting to talk about finance, those are already things that are male dominated to start with. So that, I do think there is some hesitancy, or not everybody's wired like me to just be like, screw it, I'm gonna elbow my way in and not really care, and I think, that's understandable. I don't think that that's all that's shocking. It's not easy to walk into a room where you're the only person who looks like you, whatever it is that you happen to look like, and just sort of by I don't know, just a funny example that happened recently was I was on a conference call with another lawyer and a judge, both of whom were women, and the judge had a hard time telling who was who and commented on the fact that it was very rare. She could usually figure out who was who because there was only, if there were women's voices, there was only one woman's voice, and therefore she could always tell who was who by, who had the female voice and who had the male voice, because men are usually she usually has so many more men on calls with her than women. So, I do think that that's a big barrier for a lot of people. And then I think, and Nisa, I think you sort of maybe mentioned this or referred to it when you were talking at the very beginning about, that there's better returns if women are involved in the process. But, I think part of the reason, and I believe there are studies backing this up, is that women are less likely to take unnecessary risks. But where is the sort of dividing line between unnecessary risks and not even getting your toes wet? And I don't know that anybody knows the answer to that, particularly because crypto is relatively new.
Okay, so one sort of follow-up question, and this also came in the chat. One participant mentioned this possibility of the use of gaming language. Like, so you just said, women are less likely to take unnecessary risks. Well, when you think about gaming, like if this is all, a video game, then these risks are all unnecessary because it's a game. So, how much does the sort of, what's become standard, just the semantics and nomenclature and the bro culture, right, to some degree, around crypto and crypto adjacent industries, is that affecting this? Is that like making women interpret this risk as unnecessary?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's certainly a logical or sensible conclusion. I think that it also has a bit, and I'm a lawyer, I'm not an investment person, but I think that I mean, it's not a totally new technology. It's not a totally new field anymore, but I think that it's less proven than, certainly sticking your money in a index fund, and that's at one end of the sort of risk profile, and crypto, because there's sort of less of a history and less of, people know fewer people who've invested in crypto, that it's sort of, whether it's true or not, I think that that's not a crazy way to, or it's not surprising that that's how people sort of assess the risk associated with crypto. And Nisa and probably Jessica could speak to this better than I can, given their backgrounds.
Oh, okay, so thank you. And I think let's kind of move on to the second discussion topic point, because it's really related. So why do we care about the fact that women are not participating? And little seeds of this were starting to come out on what you were saying before. I've read a lot of that women's lack of participation is directly contributing to the gender equity, wealth, and funding gap that is growing and that exists all around us, and that their absence. So not only is it fueling this growing gap, but it's also stifling innovation. So Nisa, do you agree with that? I know that you have a lot of insights from your book, at least through 2019.
Absolutely. So if you think about the barriers that exist in traditional finance and traditional venture that I was talking about, that's why the 2% number never moves, right? And there's no legislation. So along comes this tokenization mechanism that allegedly democratizes access to the financial system, allows wealth creation on a peer-to-peer basis. And if women don't go into that, then we're going to just have the same system again. We're just going to have the same problem where we're trying to go back and fix band-aids. And, so relatively new. I mean, Satoshi wrote the white paper like, 11 years ago or 13, I don't know, I lost track, but it's relatively new if you think about it. And if you think about adjacent technologies exponentially accelerating, like AI, IoT, if we have a world that's completely programmed by men as our future, like what is the metaverse, right? Is it going to be controlled by Mark Zuckerberg? Is that what it's going to look like? Or do we want to have input, half the population, into what the metaverse is, right? We want to create it, right? And that's what crypto is all about, has been creating this all along and allowing, you to be not the item that's for sale or your data, but you to actually own property in Web3 and own your data, et cetera. So it's really important that women understand that there's a huge renaissance going on. There's a huge technology shift happening, and not to be left behind in it, because I feel like women need to get uncomfortable and stand up and go into the rooms and demand a seat at the table. And it's that important, right? It's our future. And so we want to make sure that we're no longer, viewed as like these second-class citizens who don't have as much money, don't have enough capital, don't, to be able to do these things. So I can't think of anything more important.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. And definitely, I don't want the metaverse where, it's Mark Zuckerberg calling all shots. And also just a great segue into the question for you, Jessica, because you made the point that women and people of color, really anyone who's not a white man, needs to be shaping these industries, right? Crypto and these adjacent industries, as much as white men are, because these industries will in turn shape the world, and the world includes many people other than white men. So can you elaborate on that? I think that's a lot of, there's some seeds in what Nisa was saying related to that as well.
Yeah, I think you articulated that perfectly, that my concern is that if we're setting the foundation for the future now, and we're only getting one viewpoint that is shaping that foundation, it can't properly serve everyone. It will only properly serve the viewpoint of the people who created it. So I've been trying to get more women and more minorities into not just investing in crypto, that's just one side of things, but actually working in the space and helping change the technology, making it more accessible to other people like them, right? Like other people like me. I want this to be, it's supposed to be this decentralized future that gives accessibility to everyone, gives them a voice, gives them a say in how things are shaped. But if we're not actually putting that voting power in the hands of a more diverse user base, again, like Nisa said, we're just in the same situation we've been in this entire time. That's not improvement. That's just moving things onto a different system. That's just putting lipstick on a pig, or however you want to call it.
Right, right. And actually that is a great segue too into this question for you, Emily. So you made the point that we can't fix what is already broken. And actually, I think Nisa, you said this as well about putting a Band-Aid on technology. But crypto and related technologies, they're still coming into being, right? They're still relatively being formed, and lawyers are often like sitting at the table. They're part of that formation. Like we are creating the vehicles that then, you know, these industries use to deploy into the marketplace. So might this also be an opportunity to do things differently from the start? And definitely interested from like the lawyer perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's very much, I think, a chicken and egg problem. It's like you only have 2% funding because you have so few women, and it you know, rinse, repeat, right? But I think sort of going where we started, perhaps, I think Nisa commented on this at the beginning, or we were talking a little bit about legislation. You know, when we talk about I guess NASDAQ and requiring there to be women on boards, for example, that's a self-regulatory organization. That's an organization that's, you know, it's that rule has come about because a group of companies got together and said, hey, this is something that's important to us. And I think, you know, we need to think about not just the individual companies or the individual entities that are engaged in this industry, but also we need to think about how the entities relate to one another and sort of what they're thinking about, and how to sort of get those ideas or inclusion, you know,
Well,
at the sort of industry.
I'm on
Sorry,
the board of the self-regulatory organization in crypto, and nobody's talking about this. You know, it might have come about the board legislation, but the SEC did condone it at the end of the day. So I think, you know, crypto lobbying right now is worried about other things like
yes,
the infrastructure bill and the stablecoin regulations and FATF and all these things that are going to hamper innovation in the US. So like diversity is just like the low of the low right now. So yeah, so I wish that wasn't the case, but you're right that, you know, it would be nice to have an organization that was championing this.
Yeah, I mean, and it gets back to, again, you know, unfortunately, to the chicken and egg problem of like, if there's not so many women in the room, it's hard to, it's not an issue that's prioritized, and then because it's not prioritized, there are fewer women in the room.
Right, right. And okay, so building off of that, what can we do about it? So what practical, tangible things, considering the three of you and your experience in the space and your insights and your knowledge, what do you think, like those of us listening here, what can we do to get involved? And does, you know, I don't know, does gamification help? Maybe not, considering our earlier point that we discussed. What's motivating women? Maybe if you can just share some hacks, insights, resources that you've come across. So let's start with you, Nisa.
Well, I think, you know, like Sally Krawcheck always says, the guys talk about it like they're talking about sports and it's fun. I think maybe if we talked about this in terms that were fun for women, that would help. You know, a lot of the bros in the space are using acronyms that are meant to show how smart they are, but they keep other people out. They're intimidating. They're not kind of boiling down complex, you know, concepts into understandable analogies for people. And so education is part of it. Elevating other women, and so women see people like them and they feel like it's okay to be part of the group, is another part. And I think thirdly, funding women, right? Like you need to enable people who are going to have the power to diversify the ecosystem and fund other women. And if that doesn't exist, then we're just going to perpetuate, right? So yeah, there's been a lot of talk and not, you know, actual like putting your money where your mouth is, I think.
Right. Well, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of initiatives over this past decade, but the numbers have not changed for the better. They have changed for the worse.
Right.
That is true. So it's not working. The talking is not working. So Jessica, what can you share, especially coming from your perspective, like actually being, you know, in the trenches, in the weeds? What do you think? Like, what are practical steps people can take to get involved?
Well, if you're a woman, take a job in a crypto company so you can help shape what happens with that technology. Now's the time to get in. If you want to have max influence on how that company changes, how the underlying technology used by that company changes, and how it impacts everyone. Like I'm a user experience researcher. The space is completely awful to get into. It is in no way user friendly, right? So it's part of my goal to make that a better experience for everyone and make this easier to understand, and helping, once you get in, helping other people like you understand the space and understand why it's important and why they should get in, why they should get in now as opposed to waiting for some other time. I can't stress the urgency on this enough. Like I've been saying this all year, and I can continue to say this, like the time to get involved is now. It's always going to be now. Like ideally it would have been a year ago or more, but you have right now. So figure out how you can get into the industry. At the end of 2020, I personally decided I just wasn't going to work with any companies that were not involved in crypto anymore, because I want to be where people are shaping the future, and that's in crypto. So once 2020 started, I was like, I'm done working with companies that aren't in crypto. I'm going to get into this space. I asked around until I found a perfect company, a perfect opportunity to work with. And I asked them, like, here's the situation. I'm going to do awesome work for you. Teach me everything you know. And then I took what I learned from Matt and Kyle at Fishport, who are incredible and wonderful and answered all my questions and continue to help me out in this space. I took what I learned and I voluntarily share that with other women in the space to spread the knowledge, right? Like anyone has the opportunity to do that. You get to choose where you work, what you spend your time on. If you want to help shape this industry, get involved in the industry and do it. There's, you know, a whole other thing where it's like you can vote with your dollars, right? If you want to see more women in the space, then support women in that space, like in the NFT scene. And for those of you who don't know what's going on in the NFT scene, it's a lot of people supporting artists, a lot of people collecting images online. And majority of the art sales are men, right? It's a lot of men collecting men. If you want to see that change, then start supporting female artists, right? Like actually find out who the artist is of the work that you're interested in. And if they're a woman, make sure you at least have a balanced portfolio. Or if you want to just support all women artists, then just buy women artists. If you spend your money there, you're going to see more of that. You're basically telling the world, I want to see more of this when you spend your money. So you can get involved directly, or you can support by voting with your dollars, would be my recommendation.
Okay, love it. Very tangible, very specific and helpful. Also, you are alluding to resources. Now, I wonder, I don't know, but are there, like, could you point people to, like, say, a great organization, a great community, some repository of information? You know, what if someone kind of wants to take a day and, you know, get up to speed enough to understand the basic landscape? Could you help them do that?
Absolutely. I do that every week with these like private female only crypto education sessions. And I dropped in the chat like how you can get involved in that. I also wrote like a very simple step-by-step how to just get started in crypto. I'll drop that in the chat as well. And there's a little video on there on how to set up a crypto wallet. Seriously should take you 30 minutes to go through this whole process. It might take you, I don't know, let's call it 3 days to a week to get verified by an exchange. Before you can actually purchase crypto through an exchange. But these steps themselves, it's really not that hard. I know it sounds scary and everything, but once you look through the actual steps you have to take to just get started, you'll be like, oh, wow, why did I put this off so long?
Awesome. Okay, I'm glad I asked. I figured that there would be something like that you would have access to that you could share. And lastly, just community. Is there does this exist? Is there sort of Women in Crypto, an organization that all three of you are a part of possibly, that we can tell people about?
Well, Dreamers Doers is the women entrepreneur group that I mentioned earlier that I'm involved in. I'm the leader of their like crypto subgroup. So if you join Dreamers Doers, you automatically get access to all of the events that I host and all the education sessions. I run a poll and I ask people what they want to learn about next. And then we run a poll and find out what the best time is for most people. You can hop in, learn all about that. That's like the main group that I found is super supportive and just incredible with helping women, not just for educational purposes, but with their businesses and anything else you could possibly need as an entrepreneur. They are there for you. Solid community. I love them. I would also recommend getting on Twitter and just starting to follow other people in the space. You're going to learn a lot. And right now, because the community, it's so collaborative. If you have any questions, you can seriously reach out to anyone on Twitter. And, you know, mind you, they're probably pretty busy because they're doing like 50 different NFT projects right now, but they don't have a problem getting questions from strangers. I found people, when I first got into the space, I just hit up a bunch of people. I have no idea who they are. I'm still talking to people who are totally anonymous now, and we work together now. Right? Like everyone is quite friendly, quite supportive, and they will help you understand the space so that you can get involved. There's a huge push to get more people involved in crypto in general. So if you are making the effort as a woman, the resources are there for you. The support is there for you. We are all here to help you understand it and help us shape the future.
Right. I love it. Thank you. And also, I do have to plug the fourth floor. We do have industry groups as well, and we do have a number of members that are involved. And one thing that we would love to do is also just increase the participation when it comes to crypto and related technologies. And part of that is having a conversation like this. We want to continue these conversations, possibly invite all three of you back for, you know, part 2 of this discussion. So I should mention that as well. And all of that was great. Emily, how about you? What insights and maybe hacks or resources can you share about how women can get involved?
Unfortunately, I don't have anything other than sharp elbows and just sort of sometimes pushing your way. I think Jessica said it perhaps more nicely about just asking for help and reaching out to people who, you know, and asking questions. But sometimes I think, at least in my experience, you just sort of have to, you know, put on your big girl pants and walk into the room and, you know, or as a friend of mine says, you know, you put on the bra that makes you feel really good and just walk into that room and just, you know, just go for it and not be shy about it.
Not let perfect be the enemy of good.
Yeah. And you know, I guess what I've come to realize, it's, you know, over a career of practicing in areas that tend to not have a whole lot of women in them, is that, yeah, there's always going to be that one person who's going to, or two people in a room that are going to try and make you feel like you're an idiot. But usually, in fact, they're the idiots. Like usually they're not doing that because they're super secure or know what they're talking about. The people who are secure and know what they're in fact talking about, generally speaking, are nicer and happy to answer questions and happy, and much more cooperative.
That is a very true statement. Okay, so for everyone listening, we are about to move on to our final question for the panelists. And I just want to reiterate that we will confirm or reserve the last 10 minutes or so for questions that you have put in the Q&A. So if you put a question in, like maybe early on in this discussion, there's a chance, I would really appreciate it if you would kind of cut and paste and re-put it in the chat. So I will do my best after panelists answer this last question to find the questions in the chat and give them to the panelists. So now is your opportunity. And on a related note, we also would love it if you could share with us any specific barriers to entry that you personally may have experienced trying to get into the crypto space, whether it's as working in crypto like Jessica, it's investing in crypto like Nisa, it's you're a founder and you're trying to get funded, you're a lawyer and you want to break into the space, whatever it is, let us know. We would appreciate that. And then last sort of announcement before we move to the last question is to please be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, and we'll put the links in the chat as we absolutely will be continuing this conversation. So, hopefully with these fabulous panelists themselves. So if you follow us, then you'll for sure hear about any ongoing conversation that's happening. Okay, so final thoughts to share from each panelist. Nisa, this has been your life's work. So what do you think the future holds when it comes to women in crypto? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic?
I think it depends on the sector. Like to Emily's point, there are a lot of female lawyers in the space. And so I think that that's been an area where the men have been more comfortable, let's say. There's also female creators, to Jessica's, I would say on the investment side, I'm not optimistic. I would say that I'm still dealing with barriers, right? I'm trying to raise a fund so that I could fix this, and the women aren't, helping out there. So, I don't know. It seems that on the investment side, it's still very white male dominated, and not sure what it's going to take to change that. So, yeah.
Right. And when you say women aren't helping with your fund, you mean getting LPs to put money into your fund?
Exactly. Even at a lower minimum for women, like men have a much higher bar and they just do it, no problem. But the women at the much lower level, they don't.
Right. And are the barriers, like, is it just accredited investors, or is it partially because there's a higher barrier for women to participate as an LP in the fund, and that's part of the issue?
Yes and no. A lot of women don't even know they're accredited. I mean, the definition of an accredited investor has been expanded, so it's not only based on your net worth anymore. And so a lot of women that can just don't. Right.
And it's not that these women have to be qualified purchasers or hit some higher threshold.
No, not at all.
And I do think a lot of women don't know that either, that they could act as an LP in a venture fund, and that's a viable option for them, as opposed to just letting their investment sit at Fidelity, or wherever it is. Nothing bad about Fidelity.
Yeah, it's active management versus passive, and you're looking at like the opportunity to put $10,000 in and turn it into $100,000 or more. And they don't do that, but they will donate $10,000 to a charity to get a tax deduction. And that mentality is something, I don't know how to change.
Right. Okay. So Jessica, final thoughts. You are in the trenches and you are in the weeds, as I said earlier, when it comes to crypto and crypto related technologies. Do you think that they have the potential to shrink the gender wealth gap?
100%. We're already seeing that, or I'm personally already seeing that right now. The amount of art sales, for example, this is just one data point, is of women in the NFT space is more than in the traditional art world, that more than it's ever been, right? So there's already change. It's still less than the amount of sales that men have been making in the space, but it is an improvement. And we're making those steps forward. And I've noticed that working in the crypto space and in NFTs, that even the men that I work with, and I could have just been very fortunate to have found incredible people to work with and have joined really great teams, but they are very conscious of the problem. So they even make the effort to hold back when communicating, to let other people who aren't necessarily them or people who look just like them speak up and take up all the space and the time and the conversation and direct how things go. And they actually create the space for other people to shape how these projects go and shape the conversation, shape the direction things are being taken in. I think women right now have a really great opportunity to get in there because it's the Wild West right now. Everyone is figuring out, nobody knows what they're talking about. Nobody's an expert. So you don't have to feel intimidated about this. You can just dive in. Even the people who are talking, like, they know what they're talking about. They have no idea how this is going to go. You can get in right now. Nobody's going to care what your background is. I haven't even had a resume in ages. Nobody looks at that right now. Like, all they care about is, can you contribute? Can you actively contribute to what we're building right now, to shaping the future? Are you excited about this? Do you care what happens to you and people like you in the future? If you do, get involved, and you'll find that there is a huge community of people there to support you. I am so excited for just in the 2 days I've been at VaynerMedia, just seeing the energy and the way that team works. I'm super excited for the future. And all of the interactions I've had in the crypto space, just how positive, how supportive, and how forward thinking everyone has been. I think this is the moment where we can reach that tipping point and reach true equality for women.
Well, I love to hear that optimism. That's really exciting and good to hear. And so crypto, this is brand new and it's totally innovative versus the legal industry has been around for a really long time, right? Because we have like medicine and the law, and they've been around for as long as humanity has been able to write and count, basically. So, so what about the legal industry? What can the legal industry do? So kind of your final takeaway to get more women in the conversation and at the table.
I mean, I think that I do think that there's been attention in the legal field in the last few years, and maybe I'm just speaking about people I particularly know, but I feel like for a while, women coming up in the legal field, crypto or more generally, there was sort of this like, oh, if you're not a white man and you're at a law firm, you should be on the diversity committee. You should be on this committee that deals with women's issues. And I feel like over the last few years, I've really seen a pushback on that, and more women saying, no, I want to be on the comp committee of my firm, or no, I want to start my own firm, or I want to be in the room where the decisions are made, not about like, what is the sort of shiny image we present to the world, but what is like, who's making what and how are those sort of big financial decisions being made. And I think that that's an important thing, I think, to sort of keep your eye, for all of us to keep our eye on the ball, that, unfortunately, there is a bit of like, the person who has the most toys wins, right? And if you get to control how the toys are divvied up or who gets the toys, and you're in the room making that decision, it makes a difference, and not to sort of get distracted from keeping your eye on that very sort of important fact of how the world works.
Right, and hopefully the legal profession can innovate and evolve along with crypto and these emerging technologies, at least to some degree, which could maybe have a beneficial influence when it comes to diversity in those fields. So great. Wonderful. Now for everyone listening, this is now, okay, let's see, sorry. There's literally 65 new messages in my chat feed. So let me see if what questions here I can grab and put to the panelists. Also, if you contributed, if you told us about a specific barrier, that's great too. So don't forget, like a specific barrier to entry that you personally have experienced. We're going to take into account this chat, by the end of the session. So even if we don't get to it now, we might do something with it later. So please let us know. Okay, so you see, and Kat, if you have seen any questions that have jumped out at you, sorry to put you on the hot seat, I just have a very inundated chat.
It's
and
wonderful
actually,
to see so much back and forth on the chat. I think people are very passionate about this discussion.
Yes, and actually, okay, if you have a burning question, let's do it this way, since really it is actually very difficult to navigate through this chat. So could you please raise your hand, and then you could either put your question in the chat and I'll read it, or you can just verbally ask your question. And Kat, if you can keep an eye out too for anyone's hand that gets raised.
You bet.
I saw a question in here on the chat asking what is the minimum buy-in to get involved in crypto? And if you go through that step by step, where I list a few different exchanges you can sign up for, you can choose how much you're willing to put in. I know people who've put in like $50 just to try it out, right? Or $100. It's totally up to you.
Okay, yeah, amazing. Thank you for grabbing that question. Also, there's another question about what are great research references for NFTs?
Twitter. 100%. Get on Twitter, start following people who are NFT artists, people who are involved in NFT projects, and watch them, see what they do, and feel free to tweet them and ask them questions. They will answer you. Amazing. I love it. Okay, another question. I wonder if some of these things are keeping women away. This is from a participant. Very high volatility in trading, negative environmental impact of mining, potential for money laundering and other illicit activities. Is there a way to change the narrative of real world impact? That's a great question.
We're working on changing that narrative. A lot of that is what we call in the industry FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, that's been spread. A lot of those facts are incorrect. Like a lot of mining uses renewable energy, for instance, and there have been a lot of attacks by various people to keep crypto down. Yes, the volatility over time will even out as the asset class matures and gets broader. But for right now, you do have to, invest what you'd be willing to lose, have to be able to, withstand that volatility and hold or hodl. But yeah, I think it's not keeping the men out. So why is it keeping the women out, right? So
I've found like a really nice, more comfortable way to onboard people into the space who are uncomfortable with the volatility of a traditional cryptocurrency is to introduce them to stablecoins. So there's this thing called a stablecoin that is usually pegged 1-to-1 with the US dollar. So if you just want to put money in and know that when you take it out, it'll be exactly whatever money you put in, right? So you don't have to worry about these ups and downs. Why would you do that? Because you can actually stake those coins, or let's call it deposit it into an account that will make you significantly higher returns than your traditional bank account.
Amazing tip. Okay, another question. Okay, about NFTs. We're making art now to help grow our company. We gave up on asking VCs to fund us. Okay, sounds like a woman founder. Would like to hear more about how to research the best platforms to sell.
Ooh, okay. There are so many NFT platforms out there right now, and it's really going to depend on a lot of factors really, what you're trying to do, how complex of a project it is that you're working on, and if that platform can support the technology that you're unleashing. Also, there's a bit of branding around it. Like some platforms are known for certain things, right? Like some platforms are associated with certain communities. And then there are other platforms that are coming out that are like the social impact platform, right? Like the platform for good, the more efficient chain, so that you can tackle that energy, environmental cost conversation that's going around. Like a lot of people are nervous about launching NFTs because they don't want to get involved in that. But there are chains and marketplaces that are more environmentally friendly, and they can help you shape your marketing message for that. There are also platforms that will have more of a white glove service if you are not really willing to spend the time to dig into the technical weeds of NFTs and smart contracts and all that fun stuff. So it really depends on what exactly you're doing. We talk about this a lot in the private female founder groups that I was mentioning earlier. And if you want to just hop in there and ask your question, we can address specifically what it is you're talking about.
So interesting. And by the way, is it a viable alternative to venture funding? Like, is that crazy pie in the sky, or like, is this like feasible that someone could actually have it generate real money?
I'm going to let the lawyers in the room take this, because I've talked to lawyers, and you're technically selling art, not a security, with no promise of financial return or gain. That being said, I can tell you what I've seen in the space. I've seen people invest, let's call it anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000, and create a drop and raise $2.5 to $3 million in a month or 3.
Yeah, regulation hasn't caught up to what's happening yet, as is typically the case. I think the jury's out as to what actions are security and what's not. And if you're fractionalizing NFTs and you're under the Howey test have a more of a expectation of an investment, then it's likely is a security. So it's just I'll let Emily answer it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the jury's still out. I mean, I think, and I think, we went through a long period, and there were a number of actions brought by the SEC against people doing ICOs, where people tried everything under the sun to get around having to register with the SEC, and ultimately really nothing sort of worked. The SEC and the courts were pretty firm on the fact that it, looks like a security. It walks like a security. It talks like a security. It's a security. I think we haven't quite. I think it's still, the NFT space is still developing, and it remains to be seen if somebody comes up with a creative solution to avoid having to register as securities.
Sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, on that note, and maybe someone listening here is going to be inspired, and that's a new startup. That would be incredible. We are over time, so I see there's more questions coming in. Unfortunately, it is now 1:03, so I think we have to call this. But clearly, this conversation needs to keep happening. So please follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, and be alerted to part 2, and then come join us. And if you are a member of the Fourth Floor and you're interested in this, let us know and join we will form a industry specific group, and you can join it. We would love that. Also, if you're not a member of the Fourth Floor and you're interested in finding other women who might be able to continue this conversation, then consider joining us, applying to join us. But thank you everyone for coming, and thank you so much to all 3 of you, Nisa, Emily, and Jessica. Truly, this was a wonderful conversation. So thank you.